And actually, what I try to implement in my seasonal routines is that if I know that in the winter, the tendency is to slow down, what I want to prevent is to slow down too much. What I want to do is actually increase my energy just a little bit. I'm talking about a little bit, like increase my production. Why? Because I want to go places, because I have goals, because I have to produce. So I increase my energy a little bit, but it's still not the same energy that I have in the summer. Well, thank you so much for having me, Bettina. I am Ruben Gomez, the founder of the Seasonal Movement, and everything started when I realized the impact of the environment in who we are, in our energy, in our mood, and from a very practical perspective, the way that we feel, the way that we think, and the way that we behave. The seasons come in place because first of all it's the environment who expresses our genes and make us develop the way we develop, but the seasons is that pattern, that cyclical pattern that we live throughout the year that is constantly changing. So when we start looking into, wow, why do I feel this way, we often fail to ask, is this something that I feel every single time of the year, like during this time of the year? And what I recognize by studying this for over a decade is that there are patterns that if we get to understand, we get to tap into them and we can use them for our advantage. When we are not aware of it, we're victims of it. But when we realize, wow, this happens in a cycle, it happens around the same time every year. That's when the seasons are so helpful to help us recognize those patterns.
And lean into it. So there's things that we've heard. So we've heard like the seasonal, like the winter blues, when our days get shorter, the sky gets darker, we see less sun, right? What other seasons or patterns might do people need to recover from, and what are some tools and tricks and tips to help folks overcome these seasonal challenges?
Perfect. The first thing is to recognize that the location you are in and the time of the year is very unique. Anytime we hit some advice from YouTube or somebody that truly means good and is giving advice, it is very general because he doesn't really know where you are and what time of the year you're into. So what we want to recognize is that pretty much every advice, every single area of personal development and well-being has to have some sort of link to the location and the time of the year you are. That's the first step because this truly influences every single area of our lives. Now, what we know from a science perspective is that our genes are how we are born. And 20 years ago, people would think that we're doomed. Like, the reason you are is because you're born this way. But epigenetics is like this new fascinating field now that let us know, listen, your gene plus your environment is what makes you who you are, is what activates your genes and helps you develop in a certain way. So what is the environment?
Wait. You said your genes
So
plus your environment. So like if like my genetics and then we have your genetics and somebody else's genetics. So Ruben, where are you from originally? Like background. Where's your
I'm
genetics?
originally from Venezuela.
So you're
I'm originally
Venezuelan,
from Venezuela, and all my family, all my lineage comes from Spain.
Spain. So you're of Spanish genetics. So you're Spanish genetically, right? I have
Yes.
I'm Thai and German, but just go with German. And then we've got Thai genetics, right? So, so we have Asia, and then my husband's Colombian genetics, like from Colombia, right? So we're just going to look at, and then you put all of us in the same environment, and it's going to impact differently because of our genetics, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. That's cool. So what kind of environments are so when we talk about environments and people are giving this advice based on as though we're all of the same genetically makeup and same living in the exact same place on earth, that's not true, right? So what are some factors that we consider when people are being good-hearted giving advice that might not apply?
General advice can only get us so far. And part of my method is to address that and show people generally we can do these things to live in harmony with the season, to have a better life this time of the year. But it can only get us so far. So, what is the environment? The environment is not only the weather, it's not only the sunlight, it's not only the temperature or the wind. The environment is also our social dynamics that change season after season. It is the interior environments that we live, or homes. It is the place that we work. It is the things that we do, or exercising, or nutrition, or sleeping routines. Everything basically is what influences and activates our genes to develop in a certain way. The seasons and the changes of that environment are the ones that are super interesting to consider when you want to align yourself and do certain behaviors, like perhaps at what time do you go to sleep in the summer should be very different to the time you go to sleep in the winter if you live in a place like I do in the Midwest, where the winter time the sunset is around 5 p.m., but
Yeah.
in the summertime it's around 10 p.m. So now we're getting into production of hormones and neurotransmitters that are in alignment with the lighting patterns, with chronobiology. And we know that melatonin production is going to be perhaps delayed in the summer compared to the winter.
So
So
what
what we
production?
have to create is seasonal routines.
So what production is it different
What
in the summer than the winter? What did you say?
the timing of our neurotransmitters and hormones will be different in the winter than in the summer. For example, melatonin production tends to peak at night. Well, the sunset at the peakest of the summer will happen around 10 p.m. That's when melatonin is going to start accelerating even more. Perhaps it's 7, 8, 9. But in the winter, it is pretty much dark for weeks. Like it's cloudy.
Yeah.
It is dark by 5 p.m. The days where I live, the days are 1.5 times longer from a daylight perspective in the summer compared than the winter. So our production of melatonin or cortisol will vary drastically from season to season. And what we fail to recognize is that, hey, when we're talking about at what time do we go to sleep, when we're talking about sleeping, it should be in relation with the sunset, because that's when we're more prime and more naturally lean to go to sleep. Again, this is to achieve alignment and living in harmony with our environment.
So in the winter time, would it make sense to maybe like quote unquote hibernate and sleep, go to bed earlier and sleep in longer, and in the summer sleep less? Like how would you shift? What would that shift look like in the winter versus summer?
Well, I want to address the word hibernation, which is basically sleeping and not doing anything for the winter. That will be the black side of the spectrum, right? So we as humans, I think we did hibernate almost when, thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of years ago. But in
Really?
today's environment, that is not possible. That is not feasible.
Right.
We have to produce still. But what I bring to the equation is that if you imagine the yin yang, if you have the picture of the yin yang and you put it in a horizontal basis, that little curve, that is the lighting pattern that we experience throughout the year. In the winter time, at the beginning of the winter, is low, and then it starts growing until the summer, and then it starts going back down. Now, that you experience in a less dramatic fashion in Texas compared than Omaha in the Midwest compared than Alaska, right? The curve is going to be more dramatic the farther away you are from the equator, whether it's north or south. So what we have to realize is that the energy patterns should follow something similar to that same lighting pattern. Meaning, in the winter, we are not as active, or metabolism is not as active as in the summertime,
Mm-hmm.
or energy output should be a little slower. Now, I don't, again, going back to hibernation, I'm not into going that deep into it. I'm
Oh no.
into, we got to learn how to slow down a little bit, just a little bit. And actually, what I try to implement in my seasonal routines is that if I know that in the winter, the tendency is to slow down, what I want to prevent is to slow down too much. What I want to do is actually increase my energy just a little bit. I'm talking about a little bit, like increase my production. Why? Because I want to go places, because I have goals, because I have to produce. So I increase my energy a little bit, but it's still not the same energy that I have in the summer. You see, it's not a straight line. There is still a curvature to it. So in the summer, what I actually strive for is to lower my energy a little bit. Why? Because if I keep producing at a high output, there's going to be a point where I crash, and I have experienced that over the years, a
Mm-hmm.
burnout. So the idea is to do compounding growth, is to
Yeah.
increase our energy a little bit, or production a little bit in the winter, and then lower ourselves down just a little bit in the summer, to prevent crises, to prevent crashes, to prevent burn downs. And the reason why is because in the summer, our nervous system is so much active. There is so much influencing happening around us. The environment, the social
Yeah.
dynamics are so much faster. Or metabolism, or energy levels, like we are moving, we are primed for action. And what ends
Yeah.
up happening is that our nervous system gets inflamed. So I create practices that are different in the winter than in the summer.
Wait, did you say our nervous system gets inflamed in the summer from all the
There is a
activity and
tendency
all?
of that happening. Every individual is different. Again, I have to generalize, but from a generalization standpoint, we have the tendency, when we are more active, when we have more social dynamics, we're constantly meeting people, we are, we
Yeah.
can't stop. We have to mow the lawn. We have the lake, so we go to the lake. We have the kids. Activities are just so much happening at such a higher, faster pace, that the tendency is to feel overwhelmed a little bit. So that reacts as
Mm.
inflammation in our nervous system. So we are in an alert. We're in an alert mode. So what we want to do is rest. We want to bring a little bit of grounding during that time of the year, to release that tension. So the practices that we perform in the summer are to release tension, and the ones in the winter, the way that we see every single behavior from every single perspective is that, sure, we want to rest because that's the natural energy of the winter, but we want to prime ourselves up a little bit. So one of the biggest complaints I hear from people is that, hey, I feel sluggish in the afternoon during the winter time. And
Yeah.
people truly complain about the fact that they are not as productive, they don't feel the greatest, cognitively, they are not
Yeah.
at their peak, they want to rest, they want to sleep. So we have to really look at that routine and see what is creating that. Because we do have that tendency, but there is also behaviors that are increasing those. For example, we eat a big lunch, carbs, maybe even alcohol. What's going to happen in the afternoon, in the winter time, is going to lead you very easily towards feeling sluggish, to essentially just want to rest, not to be at your peak performance. That's an example of how one behavior throughout the day affects you very differently in the winter than in the summertime.
That makes so much sense. And it was something that I never but to hear you say it, it brings such clarity of that awareness. I absolutely love that. Like, it is so true. And I love how you say, bring in more energy. Because when you brought that up, I wasn't exactly sure how you meant it. But when you explain it, it makes so much more sense. Maybe eat a lighter meal at lunch, and lighter in the winter time, because even though our tendency is probably to go heavier because it's winter and you heavy winter food, to
Yes.
make that conscious decision so that you can digest better and also do more energy lifting activities in the winter time. And then in the summertime, because I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. In the summertime, when things you naturally run outside, you naturally go outside, naturally go to the lake, naturally hang out. Like right now, the weather's warming up. I'm like, let's go hit a patio. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. To really be very conscious and aware to take the time and the space and to slow your energy, to ground yourself, to take a moment to sit and watch sunrises and watch sunsets, where that might be more of a natural tendency in the winter. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
huge. Huge.
Absolutely. And we can go very deep into just this one example. We can go so much deeper. I can keep going there, and the same happens in every behavior of our lives. So if we just keep going on this example of lunch, and when you create seasonal routines, the idea is that you are conscious, you're aware what the tendency is of the season and what you actually want to achieve. And usually they contradict themselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In the winter, like you said, we tend to crave carbs, we tend to crave sugars. And it's not because we are doing it on purpose, it's because our survival non-conscious instincts are kicking in. When you see snow, when you see wind, when you see cold
Mm-hmm.
temperatures, the first thing that your brain does is, hey, you have to survive. You got to store some fat, or metabolism slows down naturally for survival
Mm-hmm.
reasons. We want to avoid risk, so we don't go outside as much and we don't exercise as much. So we also don't socialize as much. We don't say hi to our neighbors because nobody goes outside. Everybody's indoors. So every
Right.
single area of our lives completely is influenced by the environment. And to bring the point home with the example about a heavy lunch in the wintertime compared to what we should be doing, which is perhaps a little more. And again, this is generalizing because every individual is going to be a little different. The size of the meal, the timing of the meal, the composition of the meal, the quality of the ingredient. Everybody's a little different. And we have the tools to completely customize that experience. But from a generalization standpoint, you should probably eat less carbs and eat more proteins and vegetables, for example, something that might be easier to digest. The vegetables might be steamed, so that your body doesn't spend so much energy digesting when you're trying to work, perhaps. But again, just taking everything a little step farther is that when we look at our lunch break, perhaps in the winter time, I
Mm-hmm.
don't really call it a lunch break. I call it a re-energize break. So to re-energize, we hydrate, we drink water, we eat fruit, but then what do we do after? So let's say that we still have 4 more hours of work to go through after
Yeah.
lunch. Then we want to increase our energy a little bit so we are cognitively at our peak during that time and avoid that sluggishness. So after we eat, we can do a little bit of a breathing meditation perhaps, but not the calming breathing meditation that we should be doing in the summer to ground ourselves, to relax, to let go of tension. But in the winter, we can actually practice a little bit of a hyper breathing meditation. Just 5 minutes of fast breathing will get your heart pumping. And once you're done, hey, you're very active. You're ready to go. So
So you
again,
do a
it's the same
priming.
breathing concept, but used utilized differently.
So you do a priming breathing meditation in the winter and a grounding breathing meditation in the summer. I love
Correct.
this so much. So you brought up there's tools where you can customize, because we brought up like our genetics, it impacts, as well as our environment and the seasons. So can we go deeper into the tools to help us find this customization so that we can truly enjoy every year of their life in spite of the seasons, and enjoy? And I think part of that joy is producing at the level where we feel like on purpose, like with purpose.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the idea is to know our purpose clearly. That takes time to find what our purpose is and then to be on the flow. The idea is to truly understand the energy of every season so that we go with the current and we arrive to our destination with less effort, faster. We go with the flow. We don't swim against the current. And that's
Yeah.
where, when we're not aware, burnout happens at such a high rate because people might think that this is linear. I produce the same in the winter than in the summer, and it just leads to an unsustainable output of energy that then just decreases our satisfaction through life.
So when you said that, I envisioned someone swimming against a rip current, right? If you'll just go with
Yeah,
the flow and come to the outside, you can then swim back to shore. But so many people, when they're not aware and they're unaware, they'll fight that rip current, and that's how they start drowning. And we see people do this all
correct,
the time, metaphorically. They're swimming against the rip. They don't
correct.
recognize that they're in a rip current. All they got to do is just kind of go with the flow and go to the outside, and then it'll take the waves will bring them back in.
Yeah, so I can even bring that even deeper by saying that I have experienced that. So in my own business, it's very seasonal. Every business out there has a seasonality to it, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to recognize that. So in my business, it slows down dramatically in the winter time. It's just what it happens. People don't want to move out of their homes in the winter time, and it's recognized through the industry. Now, let me give you
Mm-hmm.
an example of when I wasn't aware of the RIG current. I will redo my whole marketing plan. And I will just kind of like, okay, we're going to try new strategies and we're going to revamp this
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to fire this and I'm going to hire this. And I'm just swinging against the current when no matter what I did, the result was going to be very similar. Instead of that, what I do now in the winter time is that I look from a strategic perspective and I let the current happen on the marketing side. I keep an eye open, but I plan again and I look at what the year was like, where I am, where do I want to go. That takes time, that takes energy, that takes focus, and it's a type of work that comes very natural during the winter time because the energy of the winter is one of introspection. We have more time, we are indoors more, and we tend to go there. So the idea is to direct that energy towards our purpose in a way that throughout the yearly cycle, there's going to be other times where now, okay, we're going to be going at a different rhythm, and there might not be as much planning as I was able to do during the winter time. So again, that is how we use the seasons for our advantage, is recognizing what is more convenient, what is naturally happening during that time, and entering into that current.
Oh, I love that. You're literally going with the flow of the seasons and using it to your advantage. Because the only thing that everybody ever brings up, that when I hear this topic, and I love that you're going a little bit deeper than I've ever in a conversation I've ever had, and I know you have tons of science to back this up, is they talk about the light. Just buy a light and sit in front of the light, but you're giving some really good, bigger, tactical, meaningful advice here, which is fantastic. Thank you for that. What else have you got?
Well, you touched the lighting, so I want to go deeper in that aspect because I do have a light. I actually used it today. And what happens is that in this society, people think that a pill will solve their issues without really looking at the root cause of the issue, which is our routine. You truly have to look at a multidisciplinary approach to this and really see how your day is flowing because
Yeah.
chances are we are the ones damaging ourselves. It's not just the light. Now, the light is like the number one influence that changes dramatically during the seasons. And I agree. A light is really good to have in your desk, and you're usually only going to use it in the fall and in the winter, but it's not like the light is going to solve all your issues. At the same time, so what do we get less in the wintertime? We get less lighting, we
Mm-hmm.
get less vitamin from the lighting, we get less grounding. That is something that is scientifically proven that we ground with the earth. When the seasons shift and you start going outside more and you start going to the lake, you most likely are spending more time barefoot on the outdoors. Not
Yes.
everybody, some people are just like shoe bind, but I do. As the weather changes, I move my office to my courtyard and I'm working outside on the sun. I'm barefoot.
Yes.
I'm just connected to the earth. That is something that completely goes away in the winter time.
Mm.
So that is when it comes very convenient to have one of those grounding mats. And again, it's a seasonal tool. It's like a supplement that we use in the fall and in the winter. Once it's spring and summer, it kind of goes away because we spend more time grounding with nature. So it's recognizing what is something healthy that we do that changes with the seasons. So the supplementation includes lighting, it includes grounding mats, it includes certain supplements that we don't get, but we can get most of them from our eating as well. And that's where sciences from India, like Ayurveda, come in place. You can need a little more alignment with the seasons. That studies the effects on the type of people that we are, the type of energies that happen throughout the seasons. Is preventive medicine. It's basically using the environment to prevent diseases, honestly, and to cure them. And it is a science, it's proven as well. Is wisdom, perhaps, is the way that I put it. But the one thing that is kind of sticking to today's culture is the idea of eating with the seasons. There are foods that we should be abstaining during certain seasons. For example, in the winter, I don't think nobody will benefit from eating ice cream. Like when it's cold and windy and you're putting cold into your body, that has an effect. Instead of that, in the winter, warm meals, stews, they tend to be a lot more beneficial for our health. So again, you can take this very deep, and that can lead us into our customization portion that you asked me earlier,
Yeah.
which is that the, there are sciences, there are research papers that study and prove that we are unique. We have genes, but also the environment affects us. And there is a multidisciplinary study that happens that it can prove all this. But for a single human to be able to put all that together and decide, not decide, but to tell you, hey, this is who you are,
Mm-hmm.
it's just too many data points. It's just too difficult.
Oh, yeah.
So there is an application I have access to. I have license, and I haven't created this. This has been created by smarter people than me. That over 25 years of development, AI back, and essentially we can create measurements of your body to know your unique profile, to know who you are. It also goes into questioning about diseases, whether it's by you or your family, injuries, and we
Wait, wait,
know
wait.
by
It goes,
embryology that the
wait,
way that
wait. Time out. You said it can go into what injuries we're prone to have based on our genetics, like our family genetics. So like some people are just more prone to having ligament injuries because genetically, right?
correct,
Because like my son, he's
correct,
in Portugal and they said, "Oh, you don't need like here in the States, like they say, you need to stretch, you need to stretch, you need to stretch to prevent injury." And they told him the opposite. Genetically, he didn't discover this till he went to play professionally in Portugal. And he finally had somebody, they looked at his ligaments and said, no, time out. Don't stretch. Genetically, your ligaments are loose. You need to tighten up your muscles around your
yeah,
ligaments to support your ligaments because you're naturally loose. So you guys can figure that
correct,
out without, because his whole life, coaches, you have to stretch to prevent injury. And he kept on getting like
yeah,
his hip flexors and all these kind of like ligament injuries. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Because it's general advice, like work out every day a half hour. That works for a certain kind of people, but usually it's about 30% of the population would benefit from general advice because we're all different. So from
Wait.
embryology,
You said 30. So the advice that we see on social media, I know you want to keep talking. I just want, like, I see this, I hear this, and I want to anchor it in because I'm like, wow, 30%, which 97% of statistics are made up, but I'm going to go roughly 30% of the people out there, that general advice is good for 30% of the people. So how am I going to, like, and then you just said working out every day for 30 minutes is not great for everybody.
yeah, that's correct. So let me
Mind blowing.
explain why we are able to say this so that it makes sense. This is a multidisciplinary study, and to begin with, from embryology, when we are an embryo, when we are in our mother's womb, the first 2 weeks, we are going to develop three layers. There is the ecno layer, the ethno, and the meso layer. So these layers tend to develop at a different rate. It's not extremely pronounced for most of us, but you do see individuals that are bigger, like they are bone dense, they are stronger. And then you see other individuals that are skinny and are longer. And then you see other individuals that are short and are very athletic. Now, the way that those embryo layers develop, some of them capture more nutrients and more energy and develop in that certain way. And it has to do a lot with what's being passed down, but it also has a lot to do with how the embryo develops in the womb and then as it develops through life. So, like you're saying, the example of your son, he is a type of person like we can kind of like there is like a way to generalize again so that we can have some basis. But the reality is that this is a three-dimensional model that takes over 30,000 data points to know who you are. But
Yeah.
we can generalize and put people in buckets to kind of start creating a little bit of a general idea. There is, and again, it's all based on the embryo development. So this is all science based on the way that we develop. So some individuals might be prone to certain chronic diseases of the nervous system. Why? Because the embryo part of them that developed the most was the nervous system. This is people that when you see them, they're skinnier, they're longer, they're actually not as athletic, they're always thinking, they're always in their mind, and it's because their nervous system is like the most developed part of their body and their mind. Now
Oh,
there's other people that develop like fast twitch muscles that are
yeah.
very athletic, that are actually genetically to lift, to maybe not to lift as much, but to move fast and to change directions. And then there is some people that are bigger and bulkier and stronger, and they are meant to do heavy lifting, like that's what they built for. So again, I'm generalizing here to give us an idea.
Right.
Those are like the three layers and the three types of people, and there is actually more in between, but just to keep it simple. So
Thank you.
there are like those type of people have tendencies to suffer conditions. Like for me, it's actually a little bit of stiffness in my back. Like that is actually I'm genetically designed to be a little stiffer because I don't calcify as faster as other people. Your tongue is looser. So and then there is people that need to work out, like I said, like it's not that 30-minute workout, it works for some people, but there's some people, for example, like this goes very deep into detail, and is that I wake up primed to go. I wake up and I can go to the gym, I can do a very intense workout, and then I can kind of be good for the day. There is some people that are what we call like late risers. You know, it doesn't mean they cannot wake up early, but it means like the way that their neurochemicals go up and down throughout the day is different than mine. I'm already done by like 6, 7 p.m. because I already depleted my energy and I'm already going into rest mode. But for some people, they actually should be working out at 6, 7, 8 p.m. because that's when their cortisol is high and that actually helps them to then lower that, to create that stress. So when they're done working out, they can sleep better. And the same way it goes to some people are supposed to work 25 to 45 minutes, not too long, but intense, short, perhaps medium length workouts every single day. But some people should be only be working 3 times a week because their bodies are not built to be athletic and to be in constant stress and in constant
Yeah.
fatigue because overall then it leads towards again injuries or it doesn't really improve their quality of life. So timing, frequency, intensity, this is all very important to consider.
So not all of us need to work out like Messi every single day who has those tight twitch muscles. Like, and some people
Correct.
need that recovery. They need a longer recovery. They need more intense work and a longer recovery. This is such a great conversation, Ruben. Curious, Ruben, if somebody wants to continue this conversation with you, how would they do that?
We have our social media channels on Facebook and Instagram to provide you just daily input. We will reply back to message back and forward. Now, if you truly want to see what is that we're doing from a community perspective, to do it with like-minded people, and to follow my method. I have the method and I'm giving it away for free essentially. Remember how I started saying that we have the general way of doing things and then we have the very custom way of doing things? The general, I give it away. Go dip your toes into and create your first seasonal routine. Create your routine for this specific season. What I want you to know is that that is going to change 3 months, 6 months from now. What works for you right now? I'm going to guide you to create that routine that basically involves doing the things that we know are good: proper sleep, proper exercise, proper nutrition, nurturing, loving relationships, connecting with nature,
Mhm.
and novelty. Do something fun. That is from a neurological perspective what we're supposed to be doing, and I help you identify what is that you want to do, what is that is very convenient to do, and I keep you aware. Hey, make sure you don't miss this because during this season this tends to happen, and make
Mm.
sure that you adjust this way. Create your first seasonal routine. If you want to do that, you can come to our free school community where we have that coaching for free and we meet weekly to just help you. Q&As, topic of the month, what is hot right now. Right now is transitioning, right? So we're talking about that right now, but it's gonna something else is gonna be very hot at a different time of the year, and we're gonna keep you aware of what you should be looking for to be in alignment with the season, to live your best life, and to enter into the flow, to achieve less, to achieve more with less effort by not fighting the current, but by flowing with it.
I love this so much. And just search all the socials, all the streams for the seasonal movement.
Yeah, Ruben Gomez, the seasonal movement, and I would like to provide the links in the description of this podcast so that you can just click on it and it will take you there.
That's fantastic. That's perfect. That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing and helping us understand more. And I can absolutely tell that this is an area you're completely overflowing with. And I promise our intent will be to learn this and to share this with others so others can also overflow in this area. So thank you so much, Ruben. I really appreciate your time and your share. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
You're welcome, Bettina. Thank you for having me. I look forward just keeping connection and doing life together one season at a time.